My name is Boško, as Sidara mentioned, who doesn't know me. And together we are moderators of this discussion that is a part of the Project Laboratory for Anti-Imperial Solidarity within this year's issue of Vinvoche Festival. So as we agreed at the beginning, so everybody should know that this event is being recorded and live streamed as well. So after this panel discussion, we can collect also all the questions from the chat, and at the end you can always raise the hand and this digital hand, and you can join the discussion as well. So to make a little introduction of this second panel of this project we put. So the green grass of neocolonialism is a project. Since the project departs from the environmental struggles at the peripheries of Europe and connects with similar process of the global majority. It's also part of the project exhibition, A Piece of Our Life in Each Yellow Nugget, that is presented in Wien Museum Musa Stadtgalerie at this moment. And this discursive program and online discussions aim to create a emancipatory platform that will give visibility to neocolonial struggles and decolonized, possibly, and decanonized art and knowledge production. Today's discussion deals with the paradoxical idea of green capitalism, or eco-capitalism, we call it, which suggests that capitalism can be modified to solve the problem of climate change. In practice means the uncontrolled exploitation of resources and the deprioritization of real environmental and climate goals. The resources are found at capitalist peripheries, both European and the global south, deepening their already developed modes of poverty, inequality, and social deprivation. If the European Union Green Deal is understood as green growth, while EU Critical Raw Materials Act is of a global economic importance, it becomes obvious how ecology is connected to economic aspects of capitalism or in capitalism. Since there is no social and democratic dimension, while regulations serve only market relations and systems of production, these processes could be explained through using neocolonial terms. If so, if that is the case, the discussion and comparison of historical and contemporary colonies urgently needs to start elaborating the modes of international solidarity and resistance, possibly. So we have panelists and our guests today. So Isidora, please, if you can introduce them, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. We have we invited three guests. With us is Aleksandar Matković, Krunoslav Stojaković, and Maurice Carney. Aleksandar Matković is a research associate at the Institute of Economic Sciences in Belgrade, the Department of Economic History, and an external associate at the Transnational Institute in Amsterdam. He received his doctorate on the topic of the political economy of Nazism and at the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Arts in Ljubljana, for which he received the International Award Civil Society Scholar for 2019. He was several times a visiting researcher at the Humboldt University in Berlin, as well as the University of Amsterdam. He is the founder of Citizens Association Eco-Social Action, within which he initiated the writing of the Jadr Declaration, which, together with the March from the Drina movement, created a network of organizations that fight against harmful lithium mining around the world: Chile, Portugal, Germany, Spain, etc. He also runs the blog Research and Alternatives. Krunoslav Stojaković is a historian and senior advisor of West, East, and Southeast Europe at the Center for International Dialogue and Cooperation of Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung in Berlin. His main areas of interest are the history of the labor movement, fascism, and anti-fascist resistance, especially in Yugoslavia, as well as left-wing movements and parties in Southeastern Europe. His publications include Für imminent kommunistische Grundsätze, die politisch-kulturelle Avantgarde in Yugoslavien, together with Igor Stigs, the New Balkan Left, Struggle, Success, Failures, and he has collaborated with Elfriede Müller and Titus Enge Schall on Revolutionary Gewalt. Ein Dilemma from 2019 and with Boris Kanzleiter on 1968 in Yugoslavia. Studentenproteste und kulturelle Avantgarde zwischen 1160 und 1175 Gespräche und Dokumente. My German is not that good, but I gave my best. Maurice Carney is one of the co-founders of Friends of the Congo and currently serves as the organization executive director. He has pursued a Pan-African solidarity mission for the past 25 years to build a global constituency in support of the Congolese people, and they strive to fulfill Lumumba's vision of a free and liberated Congo. His educational and professional background focuses on Black and African politics, having attended Grambling State University, University of Akron, and Howard University, and worked with the Joint Center for Political Economic Studies, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition. He provides consultations to political leaders in the US, Canada, Latin America, Africa, the UN, as well as to international NGOs and funders. He delivers lectures and workshops to universities, faith institutions, and businesses. He also does interviews and writes articles on development related to climate, energy transition, politics, peace, security, and conflict in the Congo and Africa for a wide range of publications and media outlets. Maurice is one of the producers of the Basanja film series, which document how indigenous and local communities address the challenges of Congo's rainforest, mining communities, and conflict zones.
Okay, so I just to start the kind of discussion, we wanted to introduce how we actually came to this idea to bring people from actually not artistic field, since Wim is basically artistic festival, but of course an activist as well. But since we have a on this exhibition we mentioned in each of our our piece body as exact name, we presented our work, which is a video installation, but it's a kind of video film essay by the name Record of the Termite Landscape. And that to explain the work, it's maybe too complex, but it's a short video that we actually try to find hidden connections between Serbia and Congo specifically, but not just that. That's why we are in a way brought Maurice to talk about also. But what is the point? I mean, we try to in this video essay we try to go through history to actually pull some threads from some historical events and some historical processes. Starting from 1930s, and first Vlachian rebellion in Yugoslavia, which happened in Bor mines in 1935, and then actually going in different directions through history of Yugoslavia, specifically concerning non-aligned movement as well. Coming to this moment, basically this work was shot on mining on mine site in Majdanpek, and this was our starting point actually from that landscape or from that place to go historically in different directions. And without knowing a lot, actually, we saw some parallels from, I'd say parallels, but it could be say some associations and with the history of other countries, also, and with the anti-colonial struggle in total. And we posed some questions about what is actually our position concerning how to understand Serbia at this moment, but it could be any other country on the periphery. But since we are from here, and so we try to compare, or at least to raise a question, whether in which kind of identity people can find themselves or to identify. So the different parts of different historical moments we addressed through the extractivism. So we compared the extractivism of the minerals with extractivism of an archive. So we also criticized, in a way, our personal work, working with the archives. So whether this historical, in a way, position is now changing, and how we should, doing this extraction, we should think critically today. And as well, the main point, of course, is somehow, or not main point, but somehow dealing with the land is something that is very much connected with humanity as its core. Yeah. So I just wanted to just that from that point we generally wanted to start a discussion and to broaden our knowledge, and not just our, but to share also as well with everybody else what those threads could bring us today, and what are the other threads we can weave through this tapestry, or let's say a mosaic of what's going on in today's world. So Isidora, please ask a question.
Yeah.
Just
the aim of the whole project is actually to and the whole project started from the situation we are facing in Serbia, but through research we realized that of course it's happening all around the world, but it was very interesting that it's actually happening at the peripheries of Europe, where something like that have been protected by the law, etc. But the peripheries of Europe also have certain status that is not the status of the north, or like center of the Europe. So I would actually start, and and as Boško said, we want to make these historical, so contemporary connections. So I would start with Maurice and the situation that is maybe widely known, maybe not, but in early 2025, fighting between Congolese security forces and militant groups led by M23 escalated rapidly and they culminated in M23's capture of Goma, which is the regional hub of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on the Rwandan border. So M23 is the latest in a series of Rwanda-backed militant groups that have been waging for the territory and valuable natural resources in the Eastern Congo since the late 1990s. Maurice, more that was like the last conflict, if I'm right, over the resources, but Congo situation, of course, regarding the resource-driven fights, wars, and extractivism go way in the history.
Thank you, Isidore, for inviting us, the Friends of the Congo, to be a part of the discussion. And before I address the heart of your question, I think it's important to contextualize what is currently unfolding in the Congo. Bosco mentioned threads, and the threads are really important because what's taking place in the Congo is occurring in the context of a colonial legacy, right? And it's highly symbolic in terms of the month that we're having it in and the location. Because in Belgrade, we had the first gathering of the non-aligned movement in 1961, some 60 plus years ago, which is the epitome of internationalism at the time. And two of the founders of the non-aligned movement was part of the project of the United States of Africa, the Pan-African movement. We're talking about President of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, and President of the Arab Republic, Gamal Abdel Nasser. They're two of them, the non-aligned movement. And they represent a radical wing of Africa at the time called the Casablanca group, which was a group that sought the unification of the African continent as a means of combating imperialism, combating capitalism, which at the center of imperialism capitalism is this extractivism, the extraction of the natural resources of the periphery, if we would reference Emmanuel Wallerstein, for example, to feed the core and the industries of the core. And in organizing and pulling together the Casablanca group, at the center of this project of the United States of Africa, led by the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, was the Congo. Which would serve, because of its strategic location in the heart of the African continent, the size of Western Europe, its spectacular wealth, Congo would serve as the industrial engine for the development and the advancement of Africa overall. Kwame Nkrumah actually wrote some 14 books, and only one of his books was dedicated to a particular country, and that was to the Congo. He wrote a book called The Challenge of the Congo, where he and the Prime Minister at the time, Congo's first democratically elected Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, had an agreement around Congo serving as this engine, right? And Lumumba is noteworthy, I don't know, some 9 months after his assassination. He was assassinated in January of 1961. Non-aligned movement, first meeting in Belgrade was in September of 1961. Lumumba was emblematic because he stood up to the imperial powers, the colonialists, and said that this wealth that we have in the Congo, we want to utilize it for the benefit of Congolese first and foremost, right? And the benefit of Africans writ large, as Abdel Nasser and Kwame Nkrumah in alignment with. So it is in this context of this colonial legacy where Africans, Congolese, standing up and saying and organizing and struggling, saying we want to have control and determine the affairs of our country for the benefit of our people, for the masses. And you had champions like Nkrumah and Nasser who stood by Lumumba. Today, what we see in the Congo is not solely a question of the extraction of the resources, but the leaders on the African continent are, a key number of them are in service of the empire, are in service of capitalism and the imperialists. And two of Congo's neighbors, what actually Thomas Sankara would call agents of neocolonialism. And two of those figures are Congo's neighbors, Rwanda and Uganda. Rwanda led by President Paul Kagame, Uganda led by Yoweri Museveni. These leaders are what Bill Clinton, when he was president of the United States, referred to as the Renaissance leaders of Africa, the new breed of African leaders, the new Pan-Africanists. Of course, they were anything but that. They all had key characteristics in common. They were authoritarian figures. They invaded other African countries. They had the blood of millions of Africans on their hands. And these are the figures that the West, imperialists, hold up to Africans and to the world to emulate. So unlike the Nkrumahs and the Nassars, they have ravaged the Congo, right? They've joined in the imperial project, right? And the colonial legacy and the infrastructure that's in place, they're not resisting it, they're taking advantage of it, right? They've invaded the Congo twice, 1996, 1998. And after a peace deal in 2002, 2003, they support proxy militia in the Congo in an effort to control the riches of the east of the country for their own personal benefit and for the benefit of the global elite. Right? So they are in service of empire. And this is a context in which we see January of this year unfolding. Now, with they're ravaging the Congo, they wouldn't be able to ravage the Congo the way they have without the backing in terms of the Western powers, United States, the United Kingdom in particular, in terms of financing, arming, training, providing intelligence, equipment to their militaries. And when international bodies aim to hold them to account for the war crimes, crimes against humanity, and even the 2010 United Nations report said they could be charged for crimes of genocide in the Congo if brought in front of a competent court. When there's an attempt to hold them to account, then the empire intervenes and runs diplomatic and political cover. And it is for that reason that this 30-year war of aggression and plunder that began in 1996 has been able to continue to this day. So it's within that context that we see that the Rwandan government, led by Paul Kagame, who's backed a militia group in the Congo, has captured two major cities in the east of Congo. Goma, city of 2 million people, Bukavu, city of 1 million people, and large swaths of territories that are mineral rich. One of the key areas that they've captured is a place called Rubaya, the largest coltan mine in the world. And in capturing these territories, they've displaced millions of people, right? Estimated 7 million people have been internally displaced. Hundreds of thousands were displaced since the latest uptick this year. 7,000 people were killed as a result of this recent aggression in 2025. So what is unfolding in the Congo is a continuity, right, of the colonial legacy with agents of neocolonialism represented by the likes of Paul Kagame, represented by the likes of Yoweri Museveni. Not to discount that the president of the Congo himself is also an agent of neocolonialism. So the Congo is captured. The people are caught in a trap of these agents that serve the global elite. And we can talk more about that as we get further into the conversation. But I definitely wanted to tap into the threads that Bosco mentioned, and also lay the framework in terms of the colonial legacy of the Congo and how that's very much in force in March. It has been continuing. And just quickly, a colleague of mine in the 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤 Coalition, it's a coalition of frontline groups in the Congo. We recently wrote a chapter in a book that's being published by the Rosa Luxemburg Center, and it's a chapter entitled, the 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤, a model for dismantling colonial structures in the structures in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and reclaiming the land and the resource for the people. So hopefully I'll be able to share a little bit more about that, what we wrote in terms of an affirmation for what the possibilities exist for change in the country.
Thank you, Maurice. I would actually like to expand on what you said about agents of neocolonialism, and that all these things could not happen without the backing. So, Alexandre, in July 2024, a series of environmental protests began in Serbia against the Jadar mine, which is actually a European Union-backed but also Serbian government approved lithium mining project. This project was proposed by Anglo-Austrian Rio Tinto to develop Europe's largest lithium mine in the West Serbian region of Jadar, actually causing significant backlash due to its potential environmental damage and exploitation of the local population for economic and geopolitical gain. There are also drillings in 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤. We learned about, I don't know how many spots, between 9 and 11, if I'm not wrong. So the whole Serbia is becoming one big mine that is actually supported, as Maurice was saying, by neocolonial agents, domestic agents of neocolonialism, but also by certain imperial structures. You have been very active in this team, so yeah, please tell us more about it.
Yeah, thanks again for inviting me. And basically, I just share a couple of slides that you can basically understand them as my notes, which some of them I've used actually to lecture in various Serbian faculties which are currently under blockade. I won't bore you too much with the data, but I will invite you to, think this through, basically, this idea of neocolonialism. So what struck me basically last year is that, first of all, the reason why the Serbian population has started to rebel, and second of all, the reactions from Germany and the EU. So I'm not sure if people here know the context, so I'll just briefly outline what happened. So most of the protests against Rio Tinto took place from 2021 to 2022, basically. That's where they started, and they started because the state wanted to change the law on expropriation, whereby the state would allow itself to take away your home without any court order. That's a new thing, I would say, that literally would have opened up the Pandora's box to state intervention into private property. Second of all, basically the reaction of the EU and Germany were nulls, there weren't any reactions. We were presented as these backwards people living in the back of beyond, not exactly understanding the green transition. So we were portrayed as savages, basically. And the thing is, last year, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz came to Serbia to sign unannounced several deals with car companies like Stellantis, Volkswagen, and other German companies. And basically, following his visit, the Serbian police started to kidnap people, to basically beat them up, sometimes, hold them in custody without any given reason. And so there was brutal violence which actually predated what we have now in Serbia, and that is utter constant police terror, basically. So these two things are something that we must depart from because they're not known in the media. And so I think for foreign audiences, foreign in the sense people coming from the European core, from Germany, from Austria, from Vienna, I think we need to zoom out a bit and kind of put things into perspective. And so here's one graph that some of you might even recognize. So I'm pretty sure there's some people who know who Adam Tooze is. For those who don't, he's lecturer, professor at the Columbia University, one of the probably most, if not the most important, living economic historian in the world. And yeah, so he was lecturing quite a lot on the failure of sustainable development. So, for example, he talks a lot about the end of development as such, because if you look at our current historical moment, basically, of all the talk about shifting to sustainable development, about cutting CO2 emissions, fighting climate change, which used to be prevalent, at least part of European and global politics ever since the 70s. If you look at this graph to ask, yourself, so, okay, what the hell did we do? Well, we did, shit. We did nothing, we didn't achieve anything. We actually kept on doing business as usual, with the sole exception of Europe to an extent, to a very mild extent. The rest of the world not only didn't cut CO2 emissions, but actually increased them. And so that puts us into a perspective in which we do have to admit the idea of sustainable development based on market mechanisms has failed, completely failed. And we have put ourselves in the position where we do have currently large effects of climate change, supercell storms, especially in the Balkans and whatnot. We do have hotter summers, but that's not the only consequence. There's another consequence which I want to address, which is something that we all feel far more, and especially in the Balkans, and that's exactly what's happening with Rio Tinto in Serbia. You have foreign corporations, multinational corporations like Rio Tinto using this climate emergency, using this failure of SDGs, social sustainable development goals, to say we need a quick shift. We need a quick shift in terms of opening new mines. Europe has historically been closing down the mines previously. And then you have the complete opposite happening. For the first time in history, in 2020, we have three different superpowers: Europe, the China, and the US, basically, all agreeing that we need to go carbon neutral by 2050 and 2060 when it comes to the US. And so what that does is it puts a yardstick, it puts an end game, it puts a sort of like a rooftop on our timeline. And this means for corporations and the state that by this period, they allegedly need to finish certain projects. Why I'm basically introducing the context in this way? Well, because for the first time we have a state-backed, corporations-backed green transition. It's not the first one in history. We had green transitions previously. I can talk about them in the discussion, but it's the first time I would venture to say that we have this pressure to fast-track projects. And that's exactly what's happening in Serbia. What do I mean by fast-tracking projects? Well, basically, I mean that a host of Serbian laws have been changed so as to accommodate the mining corporations. So I'm gonna translate some of the laws in the original Serbian. So we have changes done to a law on foreign investment, basically that allowed the state to create deals with foreign corporations, allowing them subsidies, allowing them land, allowing them, covering the wages of the workers. We had changes to our law on geology and mining. You can see also this change, the same changes you can see in Chile and Portugal, basically. All over the world, you see fast tracking of legal procedures, deregulation of the mining sector. Basically, even in the mining law, the state is now allowing itself to create special agreement with the multinational corporations, whereby these agreements can actually circumscribe different laws. So whatever the laws of your state are, these agreements can actually, go lower than the lowest possible, for example, mining rent, and stuff like that. And these changes include the one I began with, that's the law on expropriation, which basically almost, opened up the Pandora's box when it comes to, taking away land from the population. Add police to the equation, add basically local militias to the equation, and you have historical colonialism. We're actually going back to colonialism by deregulating the mining sector with help of the state and the police. And it's no wonder that discussions like these, discussions on colonialism are becoming more frequent because of the global failure of sustainable development as an idea, because we allowed the deregulation of the mining market, basically. This then turns itself on its head and becomes ecological colonialism, which we all know and love, quote unquote. And basically, and this is where I think we are at now. People, juggle this idea, this concept of neocolonialism quite a lot. Basically, the major definition of it being that, while colonialism occurred in actual formal colonies, neocolonialism occurred in formally independent nations. And I mean, Morris can maybe, tell us a little bit more about this, but in the history of Africa, even after the formal abolition of colonies, you sometimes had the same companies operating in the same countries, operating in a new colonial way. And this is slowly coming to Europe via Serbia. And basically, I think that, it's very productive to discuss what this is and how we can fight it, because we can't fight neocolonialism if we have different ideas about it. And for me, if you ask me, it's driven by the technological um, momentum that's building up right now in the mining sector, whereby they need to invest in these peripheral countries. They need to do it fast. They need to fast track all the legal barriers, and they have received backing by the state. This is pitting the populations of these states against both the states and the corporations, which is creating a revolutionary atmosphere, which we saw in Serbia. And this is where I will end. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandre. Yeah, so from these neocolonial agents, I would go into this imperial core that actually supports those domestic subjects. So, Krunoslave, we, as Alexander was just mentioning, there is a certain interest of Germany in Serbia in various moments and on various levels, but also in history, Germany also had run Congo and some other African countries. So regarding this situation, and also taking into account that as the data we have found is that actually German economy is actually stagnated during 2025 most of the time, and the only prosper, or let's say minimal growth, is expected to actually be in 2026. So can you please tell us about all these issues that we are now discussing? How is it visible, not only visible, is it acknowledged in the German society on a wider level, or this is just German corporations together with the government that are actually expanding and maybe, if I may say, practicing certain neocolonial politics at the periphery of Europe that society is actually not aware of?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the invitation. Thanks to Wien-Woche and Doppelgänger for inviting me. Yes, of course, Germany is a very important player in this regard, but I would try to broaden up a little bit the discussion because it's a very complex situation. So regarding the debates in Germany, when it comes to what has to be done or what could be done in order to achieve those goals Alexander, for example, mentioned, to reduce the CO2 and things like emissions for a country that is so much industrialized like Germany. It is a crucial part of the debate, of the internal debate, of course. So, and the paradox in Germany is in a way that all that we are talking about is in a way, of course, also in the interest of Germany. To they need those lithium from Serbia for the car industry and things like that. That is one part of the discussion. I will come back later to that. But in Germany, there was also a broad discussion about how could it be, especially from the civil society, how could this industrial shift be maybe a possibility for democratization, for the democratization of the economy, for the democratization of how things are produced. Also, the whole debate of degrowth was actually several years ago a very well-known debate in Germany. And since the former government, the Green, so the so-called traffic light coalition, the main point of them was, especially from the Greens, was this kind of ecological democratization under the under capitalist mode of production. So that was the main goal of this coalition, and they were completely defeated in this regard. So they were completely unsuccessful, and with the unsuccess, the result was not only that we now have another government that is even more reactionary. We have now also in the when it comes to the broader society a lack of any debate, actually, how ecological and social transformation of the industrial sector in Germany, but worldwide, actually, because that topic of socio-ecological transformation is an international topic, not a national topic. But we have now a complete lack of it. What we are facing now is a step and supporting of fossil industries, supporting of the car industry in Germany, because actually the car industry in Germany, they are not prepared, and they don't really have any plans how to overcome the traditional way of producing cars. So, they are far less aware of what has to be done than, for example, similar companies in China, for example. The whole industrial sector in Germany actually is now much more conservative when it comes to the way how energy should be gained than one could think. So actually, of course, interested if it's possible to get cheap lithium from Serbia. But that is not the main point of them. They actually, the wish and the strategy right now of the German car industry is to produce like always. So for them, that would be the best way to get the cheap oil from Russia and to be quit of all the questions we could debate on socio-ecological transformation. So that's actually not in their core interest. They know they have to do it at one point, but actually they're too late. And that is why they have such big problems. And you already mentioned the stagnation of the economy, and the car industry is one big part, maybe the most important part of the economy. And on the other hand, the left, for example, and the civil society, the left part of the civil society, too weak to impose any kind of discussions, any kind of topics in the public. It could be more worse if, for example, in the last elections, Die Linke didn't enter the parliament. But actually, that is only one very, very, very little part in a debate in Germany that is getting much more conservative than one would maybe think. So, last sentence to that point. Olaf Scholz, the way how he started those, or how he was behaving while inviting Vucic to, for example, Germany, and they visited Freiberg. Freiberg is a traditional coal mining or mining city in Germany with a very famous university. And he invited him to this Freiberg to show that mining is something that could be very ecological. Yeah. To show it for the Serbian public, but also to show it for the German public. I'm not sure if he succeeds, actually, because that was, I think, also a question. In Germany, there is no real debate about this topic of lithium mining in Serbia. From time to time, you're reading articles on that. You can find articles, and most of them are actually they have a specific sympathy for the people in Serbia and their protests, but with no consequences. Yeah, and it's not a debate in the prime. It's not a prime time debate in Germany. So, additionally to that, we have now also the situation that the German government is increasing the budget for the military. So we will have, and that will have some influences also on the car industry. We'll maybe talk about it later. But Germany announced to rise the spendings for military to 3.5% of the German GDP per year. That means more than 150 billion euro every year for the military. So, and the question that now is going to start in Germany and also the trade unions, okay, if so much money is going to be spent for the military, from which part of society they are taking this money? And of course, they will take the money or from social spendings, from the welfare state, from the health insurances, and things like that. So it's a completely attack on the social and welfare state. And we have already now, you know how the situation in Germany is with a rising, new rising star on the political scene, the AfD. They will just gain more and more support. And they are those who are actually explicitly against any kind of debate on socio-ecological transformation. So that's actually this paradox situation in Germany regarding the topic we are talking.
Yes, thank you, Bruno. Just brought to fasten up a little, brought new actually greenness in the debate, since we entering we entered the as a ecological or whatever ideological it means. So we now understand it's more also like Alexander was explaining, and also Maurice was also giving facts. This greenness is basically military greenness. So so let's maybe push the discussion a little bit in that direction, which is bringing us also to the petition that Alexander and other activists brought to European delegation, but also his all findings and acknowledgements about it. Basically, we understand, and what we also understood working on this, it's always simple that mining is always increasing before the war. So when we mentioning the Vlachian rebellion in 35 in Bor, yeah, it was, of course, it was French, but it was copper mine. But of course, copper was important for the military, for the bullets, for the guns. So the increasement actually brought the protests. The same thing happened in Congo, as I read, also in Katanga in these years. So the war actually brought also the war brought the horror wrought after the war started the process of decolonization. But I wanted to just to see where we're going at this moment. Not in general, you can talk whatever you feel like in the sense what are the processes. But for you, Alexandre, maybe to talk about this petition you brought, and what is your impression about it, and although in June European Commission approves controversial Serbian lithium project as strategic for the EU, but we can, as we understand, Kruno, it's not a primary debate in Germany. So what is like your experience from the field in that regard, and as well you were mentioning, of course, the militarization, which goes along with the technology, fast and increasing technology and development, like we have an AI, etc. So it's like all the similar processes going convergent. Convergency.
If I may just add, because there is a much there is a notion of imperialism and also neocolonialism, and what we were facing, and this was also the idea of this discussion, to bring these terms into discussion about, of course, Congo, but also Serbia and the peripheries of Europe, because it's from our experience something that is, I wouldn't say forbidden words and terms, but like we faced this notion that it's not actually very good to apply these terms on our situation, because, for example, Serbia is part of Europe, and there is also this race notion that our context cannot be understood under those terms. So, Alexandra, you already mentioned the actually points why our situation is or should be understood as a neocolonial process, but regarding the relation between corporation and government, but also this relation by the European Union as such, where certain laws are okay just for the center, but not for the periphery.
Yeah, okay. I'll basically expand upon the stuff I was talking about. And yeah, basically, I can also share another slide. I won't bore you again with too much data, but it's quite important to, see where we are basically. So I guess you can all see the slide right now. You should see it at any moment. So let me just skip to here. Well, basically, Kruno talked about the crisis of the German car industry. So here you go, the numbers, So in terms of, like decline in exports, decline in production, decline in employment, factory closures, you name it, Germany's got it, in the sense that whatever you might want to look at, it's happening in Germany, So car exports are declining, basically from 4.4 to 3.1 million cars. This translates into the decline in production from 5.7 to 4.1 million cars. That translates into the decline in employment. That translates into, etc., closing factories. So what's going on? Germany is in a crisis. And so what does the EU do? Well, the EU deregulates the mining sector, So we have always quid pro quo, from a crisis of Germany's export-oriented model, which was, set in stone basically ever since the Second World War, to what's going on in the EU. And I'm pretty sure most of, haven't heard about it, but there's something called the Omnibus Legislative Package. And so what that does is very interesting. Previously, you had something called basically corporate due diligence. Corporate due diligence, despite the technocratic sound that it has, was actually a law that prevented European companies from importing goods produced by slave labor. And this law is now going to be deleted. It's not going to be valid anymore. Why? Because of the omnibus legislative package, which the European far right in the European Parliament and the European Commission has been proposing and putting into place. It's also been scraping the EU Green New Deal. That's why you haven't been hearing about it in the media. And it's also redirecting public funds away from climate change and putting it into the pockets of the chemical and mining industries. So that's what's happening right now, and that's happening as a response to the crisis in Germany. And I wanted to highlight that. Why? Well, because that's exactly what's gonna allow European companies to fast track all of the projects that I mentioned, like the Serbian project. And that's why you have both sides of the coin doing interestingly similar stuff. Serbia deregulates the mining sector, the EU deregulates the mining sector, and then I'm gonna find out actually one different slide, which I wanted to show to you as well, which kind of points towards the consequences of what I just talked about. And also, this might be something that people don't know exactly too much, but they should know, you should know about what's happening here. And so let me skip here to some images. So here you have something called a snakehead, and basically it's a submarine drone, and you have something called the ripsaw, and basically a tank drone, both produced in Germany. And when Kruna talked about the militarization of the German economy, that's what he probably had in mind, And so what these two vehicles are connected with is that they will both have lithium-ion batteries, So there you go. There's another interest by Germany in the Serbian lithium, right? And because usually the battery regulations used by the military industry are basically they are protected by law from being scrutinized by us, the researchers. We cannot know how much lithium goes into the German military. We cannot know at what prices does it, get bought and sold, and we cannot know the capacities which the German military has when it comes to the vehicles that use it. And so for me, that represents quite a problematic thing, right? And it's very interesting that lithium itself has a large military history that goes back to the Second World War. It was used in ships, it was used in balloons, it was used all over the place. And that sort of history is not usually talked about because of PR purposes, because it's being refurbished as a green element, so to speak, but it has its own military uses. And so when we talk about colonialism today, I mean, you mentioned the racial element, which colonialism had, of course, in Africa and elsewhere. But there's one theorist called David Landes, also one economic historian, who I think realized something very important. Colonies were not profitable at all times and constantly. Some were not profitable for the states. Congo itself was quite profitable because the king of Belgium, Leopold II, basically went into outright terror in order to supply the European car industry with rubber. And the thing is, the guiding motive behind both racialized and non-racialized colonialism was profit, and profit by the companies. So even when colonies were not profitable for the states themselves, you had to keep an army and whatnot, the companies themselves were the driving force for colonialism, even when it was not profitable. So that was this guy, David Landes, actually realized when he talks about imperialism, he talks about corporations. He does not necessarily talk about the states. And I think we should also follow the example and talk about corporations which are now driving and receiving backing from the states for colonialism, while what the state is doing is deregulating the mining sector and arming itself. And so now you have basically the boomerang getting back from the corporations to the state. So there's this always this sort of a relation between the state and the corporations. And what I'm aiming to go at, I will just show you for the last slide. So in the US, you have something called Project 2025. Trump's basically plan for what he plans to do when he gets into power, as he did. And one of the things that's very important to mention here, and this is where I'll end because we've been talking too much already. So it's called basically the Defense Production Act, again, a military act, which allows Trump and the US presidents in general to basically intervene in the economy for defense purposes. And the way this has been used is to designate, to allow the state itself to designate different areas, mining areas in the USA to delete the environmental protection laws, to circumscribe the environmental protection laws, and to give priority to the mining companies, to give them subsidies and whatnot, and to deregulate the mining industry. So we have also a very interesting militarized way of deregulating the mining sector. And so put, all of this together, and you're pretty much heading for old school colonialism. So that's enough for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexander. I will ask Maurice to add his opinion, specifically about artisanal mining, which is like totally different from what we know in industrial mining, and it is a kind of vision of the future, a very dystopian future. So since we only heard a lot about it, and of course read a lot about it and watch it, but how this change of artisanal mining still functioning in this sense, or in terms of supported by military or state military or military financed by corporations in Congo. Does in any way these things are changing or probably going worse, or what is the situation for, or any kind of comment what we were talking about? I don't know if Maurice is here. Hope.
Reese, just please unmute your.
Yeah, okay.
Ah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
I wasn't able to unmute.
Cool.
Thank you. And in responding to, I'll respond directly to the artisanal mining question. Friends of the Congo, in collaboration with the Basanja Coalition and Alkebulan Film Productions, we produced a series of films on artisanal mining, and I'll share the links in the group where people can access them. Before I do that, I think there are a few keeping in mind the threads. There are a few key important threads that came from what Alexander shared in both his intervention. Of course, one deals with this notion, or really the theoretical framing of neocolonialism. Earlier, I talked about Kwame Nkrumah and the 14 books that he wrote. One of those books was one entitled "Neocolonialism: The Last Stage of Imperialism." Neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And it's from this book that we have the term, that we're introduced to neocolonialism. Where Nkrumah said that this phase of imperialism is its most dangerous stage, right? And he said, in place of colonialism as the main instrument of imperialism, we have today neocolonialism. So that is a theoretical framing of neocolonialism that comes from its author, Kwame Nkrumah. Now, what is noteworthy, not necessarily in the book, which was published in 1965, he came under tremendous pressure from the United States not to publish the book, Neocolonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. In fact, when he did publish it, the United States, whatever aid it was providing to Ghana at the time, it withdrew the aid, right? And then, within the year of the publication of the book, Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown in a CIA-backed coup, right? So this, from its very roots, in terms of its theoretical roots, this notion of, or this principle of neocolonialism is critical to our understanding and our critique of imperialism, right? And this, with it being, neocolonialism being the main instrument of imperialism, interestingly enough, we saw, Kwame Nkrumah centering the Congo again, focusing on the companies. In his book, he talks about the Anglo-American Corporation, right? And he also talks about the Union Minière de Haute-Katanga, the main colonial enterprise dating back to early Belgium, back to the early 1900s. So I think it's so important. I know, Isidore, you talked about the racial question, which is key. Nkrumah focused on the corporate question, the companies, and how the companies were moving in to dominate, the political landscape, right? So I think that's vital for us in understanding, the theoretical framing and origin of neocolonialism when we talk about it. And the Congo is a space that represents that par excellence, as Nkrumah documents in his book. And a part of that exploitation, right? That part of that neocolonial exploitation of the Congo is the artisanal miners, which up until recently represented about 20%, right, or so of the production of a key mineral, cobalt, that's vital to this energy transition that we talk about. And Congo is probably unique, certainly in Africa, if not in the world, in terms of its positioning as it relates to these two dominant phenomena of our time. The combating of the climate crisis on the one hand, and in an effort to mitigate the climate crisis, the advent of the latest expression of green energy transition. So why do I say that? Because Congo is a part of the second largest rainforest in the world. It's often referred to as the second lung of the world, after the Amazon. Even though it's the second largest rainforest in the world, it sequesters more carbon than the Amazon and Borneo combined, right? And also home to the largest tropical peatlands, which is the size of England. And peatlands is an area where sediment and foliage have developed over thousands of years and trapped in the soil. And if it's disturbed, the carbon is released from the peatlands, it would be in the Congo Basin, it'd be equivalent to about 20 years of pollution that comes from the burning of fossil fuels in the United States. So when we talk about combating the climate crisis, Congo looms large. Now, when we talk about this energy transition, right, which is powered by batteries, Congo is dominant again, because Congo produces about 70% of the world's cobalt, right, which is vital to this energy transition. And if you were to add up all the countries in the world that produce cobalt, they wouldn't equal what Congo produces. In fact, the artisanal miners that you reference, if you were to take the production of cobalt that comes from the artisanal miners, they would represent the second largest producers of cobalt in the world, right? Now, cobalt, back to Alexander again, we talk about cobalt today in the context of this energy transition. But Alexander referencing the 2025 Heritage Foundation project, and the military underpinning of these minerals is right on. Back in the early 1980s, the United States initiated what they called the National Materials and Minerals Policy Research and Development Act of 1980, which sought to capture, because the United States doesn't produce cobalt, but its military is heavily reliant on cobalt. So it's a strategic military mineral first and foremost. In fact, there's this renowned African by the name of Ali Mazrui. He ran a series called The Africans. He famously stated that if the cobalt coming out of the Congo was to be cut off, the entire NATO flotilla would be grounded, right? So he was basically articulating or sharing the importance of this mineral, right, to the military industry, whether it's NATO or the US, US itself. Now, within the Congo itself, the artisanal mining sector it's got layers to it, right? I know we've seen the data, some 40,000 children or so who are basically child laborers in the Congo, in that sector. However, in looking at the layers of artisanal and small-scale mining in the Congo, according to the World Bank, there's about up to 2 million artisanal and small-scale miners in the Congo. This is in the informal sector, right? However, an additional 10 times that amount benefit or is reliant on the artisanal and small-scale mining sector. As dangerous it is as it relates to health conditions, asthma, malformed births by women, you just name it, right? because you're dealing with toxic materials. So in a lot of respects, you know, and we document this in our films, Mikuba, for example. It shows the dire conditions that are at the bottom of the supply chain, whether it's the military industrial supply chain, the electric vehicle supply chain, the technology supply chain, that all rely on these minerals coming out of the Congo. Because of this capitalist system, it is a necessity for you know, for people living in a with a colonial legacy, a colonial context. To give you some numbers around why I say this in this colonial context where the country is being plundered, economists say they're about $24 trillion worth of mineral wealth in the Congo. We don't, you know, that's about equivalent to the GDP of the United States. We don't know if that's true or not, but that's the estimate to give you a sense based on the mineral wealth that's there. Now, in a country with $24 trillion worth of mineral wealth, a population of 110,000 inhabitants, right? We have a situation where up to 70 million of these people living in this spectacular wealth earn less than $2.15 a day, according to the World Bank. Meanwhile, as a result of this structural system that's in place, this capitalist system that's in place, we have an Israeli billionaire who has captured the mines in the Congo, copper mines and cobalt mines, and in cahoots with a Swiss company called Glencore, where and his name is Dan Gertler, where he books in royalties $200,000 a day because of the mines that he's captured and the concessions that he's captured in cahoots, right, with the local elites in the Congo who also benefit. So those artisanal miners that you asked about, they are trapped at this very bottom, and the only way they have even of eking out, and that, you can't even say a basic standard of living, but survival, is by digging into the ground with their hands, so that they can, you know, with rudimentary tools, in order to make their $2, you know, a day. Meanwhile, the local elites, the global elites, and represented, you know, by the U.S. and Donald Trump, they, to go back to your original question, the initial question, must go around the conflict in the Congo. We have the United States coming in and saying, "Hey, we're going to broker this, you know, this peace deal. We're going to broker a peace deal. This war has been going on for 30 years. We're going to, you know, intervene." That's what Donald Trump says, in order to bring an end into it. Now, when Donald Trump signaled this interest, the neocolonial elite in Kinshasa, the capital of the Congo, monitoring the global landscape, where the U.S. was had a contentious relationship with Ukraine and Zelensky. Remember when Donald Trump came into office this year, he's like, "Okay, Zelensky, if you want to continue to benefit from U.S. military largesse, you're going to have to give up your minerals," right? Basically, a minerals for security deal. So the Congolese president, seeing that the contention there, he said, "Hey, come to the Congo. We'll enter into a minerals for security deal with you," because he's under duress from a Rwanda-backed militia that's threatening his power. And Trump responded, in kind. And from what, if you believe some of the reports coming out from African intelligence, they say that the deals that possible on the table that are on the table could be up to $2 to $3 trillion. I think that's an exaggeration, but it gives you a sense, in any case, of what the stakes are. And Donald Trump and the Trump administration facilitated what they call a peace accord, right? In June of this year, June 27th of this year, they call it the Washington Accord. But at the center of this accord between the Rwandan government, the Congolese government, is a launching pad for a minerals deal. A minerals deal that Trump's, some of the close people to Trump, is campaign finance co-chair, a gentleman by the name of Gentry Beach out of Texas. He's eyeing coltan mine that's been captured by the militia. You have the likes of Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, and who investors in a company called Cobalt Metals, and they've raised $1 billion so far this year in order to pursue lithium mine in the east of the Congo, one of the largest finds in the world, they say. They recently signed a deal with the Congolese government. So you just trying to paint a picture that is under these layers that the artisanal miners are trying to eke out a basic form of survival, right? And their emphasis when they come into confrontation with the industrial mining sector. If you one example is is a mining area called Tenke Fungurume, that's owned by the Chinese, China Molybdenum. They acquired it from the American company Freeport-McMoRan, one of the largest copper mines in the world. And the battle that takes place with artisanal miners is that they're constantly seeking areas of easy access for minerals. So they came in confrontation with China Molybdenum. And China Molybdenum called in the state security forces that came in and crushed the artisanal miners. Artisanal miners were throwing rocks. The state security forces were firing bullets and killing these miners. So when it comes to questions of security, as I've just outlined, when it comes to questions of displacement, because these mines that are being developed, they're displacing entire populations where they're promising that they'll get school and health and housing, but rarely ever deliver. So we're talking about questions of displacement. Talk about questions of environmental degradation. So all of these, the vicissitudes of this system that weighs on the people are at play in a space that is supposed to be spectacularly wealthy, which one would think would also, that wealth would benefit its citizens. And so those are the systems that are at play working against artisanal miners. Those are the structures that are in place, which really, for me, harkens to a famous quote made by the current Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, in an interview that he gave to the Financial Times in 2008, sorry. And he said in that interview, he said, let's not forget that the international community has systematically looted the Congo. And those words are what we see playing out today. Now, of course, he could have added at the time for the last 125 years. So just wanted to give you a sense that the weight that's on these artisanal miners and what they're facing at the bottom of the EV and energy transition era that we're in. And in our films, the 3 films that Basanja Coalition and Friends of Congo have produced, we document their voices and the challenges that they face. And I'll share the access to the films in the link. In the chat. I'll share the link in the chat.
Thank you, Maurice. What you were saying is actually something that is a good introduction for the last circle, and we actually wanted to start with this quote by Fanon, who said that the fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo. Meaning that these interconnections of anti-colonial struggles around the world is actually imperative for solidarity across oppressed people worldwide. So one would say that beside our fate is at stake in Congo. Maybe we also can say that freedom of all of us at stake in Gaza, in Sudan, and so many other places. So what we actually wanted through all this discussion to make these threads, and I would continue and pose this last question to three of you. We at the beginning started with this idea of non-aligned movement in the 60s that was mentioned, and it was actually a diplomatic movement of the third way, something that came from, let's say, above. Third way between Soviet and socialist bloc and the capitalist West. In nowadays circumstances and what we have been actually discussing tonight is that today we don't have this division anymore. Actually, there is no state that would strive for the ideas of non-aligned movement, that would fight for decolonization, for being against apartheid, for supporting anti-colonial struggles. Because actually there are not states, there are no states that are not capitalist at all today. So if we have this in mind, we need to actually rely on the people. But the main maybe question would be what would be the ways and methodologies of resistance today in these circumstances, and how we actually can build this solidarity beyond race, as we mentioned, but also class, as we mentioned, in this geographical division on global south and global north. So where are those points, connecting points of Congo, Serbia, and elsewhere? And I would actually maybe start with Krunoslav, especially from what was said regarding the German German this thirst for the resources, but also car and military industry that is expanding and that is actually that have this interest in the lithium, but all other resources across the globe.
Yes, first of all, I would say, or I would start with something positive. I think it's possible to create international solidarity alliance or political movements who are attacking the dominant way of how economies or societies have to function under the umbrella of the global, mostly US capitalist system. I'm quite positive that it is possible, but right now I would say we are not at the point where we are in any case anywhere able to see at which point we would we could jump in. When we stick to the example of Germany, because you asked me what is the situation in Germany. So actually, you see, we talked about the German car industry. So, but the German car industry is not just an industry in Germany. There are also other industries, mining industries, steel industry, chemical industry, pharma industry, very big, very important industries. Some of them even more important actually than the automotive industry. But there is something else in Germany, especially in the western part. It's a part. It's a part of the ideology of a whole society. It's like the whole Western German, especially economic so-called miracle in the 50s, 60s is connected to the automotive industry. And the whole reflection of the Western German society is directed to the automotive industry. The most successful political slogan in Western Germany imposed by the automotive industry. And you can ask whoever you want in Germany, everyone knows the slogan. It's freie Fahrt für freie Bürger, free ride for free citizens. It is also a strong anti-communist level, because it was directed against the Eastern Germany, because they're so poor, they don't have the nice Mercedes cars and things like that. So it's more than just an industry. And if you take this into account, then additionally on that, it depends on the regions in Germany. So in Bavaria, where BMW is, or in the area around Stuttgart, where more or less all other car producers in Germany are, or if you take Lower Saxonia with Volkswagen, the debates there are completely different to the debates in other parts of Germany where the automotive industry is not part of the economic system of these regions. So you have, even in Germany, problems in the trade unions to gain solidarity amongst the trade union members if they are working in the automotive industry or in the steel industry in the Ruhr area or something like that. And then you can take it on the global level and you will see how complicated the whole situation is. And taking this into account, of course, Germany has a lot of interest in forcing or be proactive when it comes to this new minings. And those new minings will produce, of course, colonial or neocolonial asymmetrical situations and partnerships, and that is obvious. And the German industry, they know that, the political elite in Germany, they know that the German working class is divided. They are under pressure, and there is no political actor who is able to organize it on a level, on a scale that is large enough, at least at this moment, that is large enough to attack this way of the state of art in ideological terms. And then on the contrary, you have a reactionary political actor with the AfD, who is like fueling this animosities in Germany and on the scale of Europe. And that is why the only way out of from this situation is organizing on the local level, like for example in Serbia, around where the coal mining will, on the national level, on the European level. I'm very skeptical about the European Union, but the European Parliament could be a place if there would be left actors in the European Parliament. That could be at least a place where such questions could be debated. Now we have a conservative national governments, and we have a reactionary European Commission, and we have a right-wing European Parliament. So it's hard to see, or it will be a long run for us, to reorganize in a way to stop this development.
Thank you, Krunoslav. Alexander, the same question. Taking all this into account, who are actually the subjective forces and where is the political organization today, especially regarding these questions?
Yeah.
That are urgent.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll tackle the European side. What's interesting is usually we tend to think about, Europe as a whole benefiting from this. But the fact is, there's been quite a lot of resistance in all of the minor mining towns, So even in Austria and elsewhere, in Lützerath in Germany, for example, even that was a coal mine, you have like fewer smaller towns all over Europe where local resistance is abound. And I mean, but also in Portugal is just like one very actually big example of one such resistance. And but the point I'm aiming to make is different, because the European Union has financially supported both military movements in Rwanda and currently the authoritarian regime in Serbia. Should there be something with the projects that it has supported? Say somebody dies because of the other project, the politicians who have been now financially tied to the other project will be, like they will be scrutinized. Whether there is some reactions or not, I cannot like predict the future. But basically, there is a string, sort of line that will connect the responsibility of the European politicians and their constituency. So that might produce a crisis, meaning that there are certain groups that might be interested in supporting actually the Serbian movement. That taken into account, I myself have been working on transnational resistance for quite some time. And in 2022, we did create this Jadr declaration that kind of connected different anti-lithium groups in Portugal, Germany, Bosnia, Chile, and several other countries. And we shared information and strategies that the mining companies, that states used against citizens. And the idea behind it, from my point of view, was to organize the resistance economically. Since we are talking about transnational corporations, they are, as their name implies, transnational when it comes to economic organization. And so it is along those lines that solidarity must be built up if it does not want to be reduced to being a simple word, so we can all love each other. That's all fine and good, and we should, but we also need to make it real. That's it for me.
Thank you. Maurice,
Yes.
maybe it seemed that we put this accent on the Europe, but actually maybe it's because this current situation is such, but the whole discussion and everything is actually developed in order to make this connection with Congo and Africa, especially because you have such a long history and much more experience. So can you add to this question of bringing solidarity not only on the African or Pan-African, in the Pan-African context, but actually globally, and connecting our contexts?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that and for the question. I certainly have to concur with Alexander around the transnational nature of the resistance, because the forces that are ravaging local communities, whether it's in the global south or the global north, are transnational in nature. And an example from Friends of the Congo, we've been doing solidarity work for 25 years now. And I have to say, this moment where we see real genocide being carried out in real time has sparked something in the younger generation who not only resisting Israeli genocidal war against Palestinians, but they've expanded their scope of awareness, right, and engagement beyond Palestine, from which those organizing around the Congo, Sudan, have benefited from, and the notion of collective liberation. One of us are not free until all of us are free, has gained currency and traction among this generation, the Gen Zs and the millennials. So just just as a foundation, I think that's important to note. Even though we haven't risen to the level where we've been able to staunch, roll back, stop, this genocide that's unfolding. There is this foundational basis that exists among this the current generation. Now, for us, practically, as it relates to solidarity, take for example the Swiss company, Glencore, who's not only present in the Congo, but throughout the global South. Congo, they deal with copper and cobalt, but in places like Colombia and elsewhere, they deal with coal. So we collaborated with folks in Latin America and folks in Europe on the Stop Glencore campaign, whether it's a day of action of demonstrations, where we've demonstrated in front of the Swiss embassy in Washington, D.C., while in Switzerland, people, have organized and demonstrated there. The same in the UK, on the streets. And as we did that on the streets, there are also folks who were in shareholder meetings with Glencore, bringing the concerns of the shareholders around their practices in the global South. So that model of the global South, of affected communities, local communities, teaming up with folks in the global North who have access to the boardrooms of these companies, and those in the global North who can stand up in front of the home country, like embassy in Switzerland in Washington, D.C., is an important model for us to build on. So it's just that we haven't reached like a critical mass as yet, where we can have a concrete dent in the practices of these transnational corporations. But make no mistake about it, they're watching, they're cognizant, they're concerned about it, and they, some of our folks have been in meetings where they've complained. They're like, why are these activists, railing against us? We're not, carrying out any bad practices in these places that they're talking about. But we have testimonies. We're able to take testimonies from people in the Lualaba province in the Congo, where Glencore is, where they talk about the toxic dust that comes from the mining, where they talk about the security situation as a result of the company being present. And those voices, through these testimonies, are able to circulate among, the affected communities of Glencore in different parts of the global South, and of course as well with folks in the global North who are in solidarity with us in putting pressure. So we can draw some level of solace from the fact that these actions are taking place. These coalitions are being built. These partnerships are being established. Even as we prepare to go, as to deal with the Conference of Parties in Belém in Brazil, the 30th, we see the People's Summit, where people in the global South are, issuing declarations calling on organizers to be on one page, to speak with one voice, solid voice for the indigenous and local communities that are paying the dearest price for this climate catastrophe. Gathering in advance of COP30. So these are some of the concrete collaborations, partnership building that's occurring in our circles on a transnational level that gives us hope that we can ultimately get to a critical mass where we can flip the script, so to speak. So I'm encouraged by these by the relationships that we're building, the partnerships we're building. And I'm also encouraged by the moment, in spite of the devastation, we see a certain level of consensus among this generation for collective liberation, taking into consideration indigenous local peoples, whether they're in the global north or global south.
Yes, thank you. Maybe it's best way to finish this official part and this positive feeling, I would say. Krunoslav had to leave us, unfortunately, because he had to leave the building where he was calling from. And we are saying him bye and hope you understand. So this is just this is a part for other participants to participate for if they want to ask questions or debates, whatever. Whether they want to pose a question in chat or maybe to ask alive, just have to raise a hand so we can give them entrance if they want. Ready? Or anyone else? I mean, if you want to add for.
Okay, if there is. Maurice mentioned China. It would be nice to elaborate on that, also having in mind the situation in Serbia. Yeah, we didn't made this connection when we talked about corporations, but actually China firms for mining are very present in Serbia regarding that. Maurice, if you can elaborate on the connection.
Yeah, the China question is a really interesting one. That there's some nuance in there. You know, what we see, a few things. So we see China doing, or Chinese companies, let's say, right? There's some state companies, some private companies doing in the Congo is, and really Africa, is to be a part of that capitalist system, right? They didn't build it, you know, but they're coming in a way, not to disrupt it, but certain to do business for the benefit of the Chinese state, Chinese companies, right? Now, in doing that, take for example, back in 2008 or so, the Congolese government wanted to enter into a minerals for infrastructure swap with the Chinese. About a $9 billion deal, at the time the largest deal on the African continent by the Chinese. Now, when the Congolese state seeking to ink this deal, they were basically coming out of a conflict as a transition to to a new government. The World Bank had written the mining laws for the Congo, of course, to the benefit of private entities. And Congo had this $11 billion debt that it owed to private entities in the West, Paris Club, London Club, those folks. And at the same time, it was cash strapped, needed hundreds of millions of dollars from the World Bank in order to operate the government. So when the $9 billion deal came on the table, the World Bank and the West said that, hey, hold your horses, you're a sovereign state. But if you go through with this deal with the Chinese, that $11 billion debt that we're set up to retire, we may not retire it, right? The $600 million that you need to operate your government, we may not, distribute it. So we see this clash, right? between the Chinese responded in the pages of the Financial Times, and they said basically the West is blackmailing the Congo because they're not allowing the sovereign state to enter into a deal with the Chinese on its own terms. They have to respond to the World Bank, to the IMF, and to Western governments. And Congolese, they had to succumb. If they were going to get that debt retired, and they're going to get the operating monies for the government, they had to, respond to the demands that came from the West. So they renegotiated the deal to about $6 billion or so. So that's one layer of it, where we see, this clash, between, the Bretton Woods institutions and the global up and coming global South powers represented by China. So that's a layer of that you have to take into consideration. Now, between 2001 and 2002, the United Nations published a series of reports on the illicit exploitation of minerals in the Congo. And they listed some 85 companies that were implicated in the illicit exploitation of minerals that had violated OECD guidelines, right? And in the 85 companies, I think there was just one Chinese company, and there weren't even a mining company. So the illicit exploitation of the Congo, true to its history, is being carried out predominantly by companies from Europe, United States, and Canada. That was in 2001. Fast forward to today, up to 80% of the copper and cobalt mines in the Congo are owned by Chinese. Okay? So even when Donald Trump is coming in now and saying that we're going to enter into a critical minerals deal with the Congo, part of his effort is to combat the Chinese presence in the Congo. In the U.S. Congress, there were about three bills put up in the Congress by members to combat China in the Congo, right? And even the deals that Donald Trump is looking to establish in the companies, they can't get access to those mines in the south of the Congo. That's because they're captured by the Chinese. So there is that dynamic, as well. And that China had, if you follow Chinese politics and their planning, their vision is hundreds of years in advance. So the U.S. is now coming to the table around these critical mineral needs that it has. Same for Europe. Even though one U.S. major corporation had control of one of the largest mines in the Congo, the Tenke-Fungurume mine that I mentioned earlier, right? The Freeport-McMoRan out of Arizona. But they ran into debt, and that they sold their mines to the Chinese. So those are some of the layers where we see an opening that there may be with the Chinese that you may not see with the Western corporations. And I don't know if folks, I think some of the previous talks, he talked about Indonesia. Indonesia, what they've done, their nickel is vital to this energy transition period that we're in. And they had a policy, they instituted a policy that said no raw nickel is coming out of Indonesia, right? It has to be refined and processed right here. And of course, that drew the ire of the European Union. And I think they took the Indonesians to the court and the World Trade Organization against, to try and prevent Indonesia from blocking its raw nickel from getting out. Now, the leadership in Indonesia did that, and they called on the Chinese, who are already vested in the country, right, to say, come in, work with us to develop a vertically integrated value chain where we're benefiting, the Indonesians are benefiting at the different levels of the value chain, right? And that is working out for the government. And other issues, of course, when it comes to energy, local communities, the energy that they use, they need energy to power these industries in Indonesia, they're drawing up on coal predominantly. So local communities are, resisting on that level. But at least that vision that they have and the foresight to move on it, that doesn't exist, hasn't manifested itself in the Congo yet. So although we talk about the Chinese and the companies, there's also, again, we get back to the neocolonial agents, the elites, who are concerned primarily about their belly and not necessarily the masses overall. So they play a role in maintaining the system that's in place that doesn't accrue to the benefit of the working class or the oppressed masses. Those are just like a sketch of the Chinese presence in the Congo and the different players and the layers that exist. What we're saying in terms of solution is if the local communities, in this paper, this chapter that we wrote in the book that's going to be published, the Basanjo Coalition, is saying is that local communities are informed, they're organized, they're mobilized. We see them as the last line of defense in not only putting pressure on the companies, but certainly on their local elites, so that their local elites don't sell them out. Whether it's to the Chinese or to the Europeans or to the Americans, the local elites are concerned about their bellies, and it's only a force coming from the bottom up, from local communities that challenge these local elites who are speaking and acting on behalf of them, that we believe that there's a path to a solution.
Thank you, Maurice. There is another question, but I think you actually answered. Nevertheless, I will read it, and then we will close this discussion. So, what is the solution? You talked about the problems investing in mining and all the fossil fuel-based industry, etc. What would be the solution for more sustainable functioning of humanity? I'm asking for real solution, not green renewable energy, modern propaganda stuff. And how probably is the third world war if we continue with this pace? I think Maurice, but all the panelists actually mentioned this transnational solidarity on one hand, but on the other, what you just said, it's up to the local communities to be organized. And if we see this in the in Congo case, we also have been witnessing this for 11 months in Serbia case. Personally, maybe this is a really long and hard process, but at least it's a process. But if you want to add anything, Maurice, Alexander, please do.
Mm-hmm.
Just quickly on the local organizing, what is paramount and important, and especially the Mina's question, is to be in solidarity with those local organizers, right? Whether it's amplifying their voices, whether it's providing them access to resources, even in the case of Congo, which part of the colonial legacy that it suffers from is the colonial prism through which people see the Congo, in that they figure what's happening there is a result of innate, tribalistic, long-time practices. So even the reframing, being engaged in a reframing of how we view Congo and Africa. Remember, Africa is often viewed as a dark continent. Congo is viewed as the heart of darkness, a la Joseph Conrad, right, with his novella. Solidarity also means recognizing the humanity, the full humanity of the people who are there, and that they have agency, and that they're not just victims, but they're organizing and resisting. And with us, those of us who are in the global north, who have access to certain privileges, me being in Washington, D.C., I say I benefit from empire privilege. I'm in the heart of the empire. The privileges that come with that. I can take my passport and go and move around Africa better than folks who living in Africa can move, because of that empire privilege that I have, of that, that Western passport. So we can, a host of ways we can be in solidarity with those frontline communities, whether they're frontline communities in the rainforest, indigenous communities, frontline communities at the bottom of the energy supply chain, frontline communities in conflict. It's key that we be in solidarity with them and their, myriad of ways in which we can do that.
Thank you. Alexander, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to, if I may, on the Chinese investment side, I think somebody asked about Serbia. It's very interesting that there's the Belt and Road Initiative is not essentially organized thing, and it's not Beijing which actually plans it. It's the host states. So even in Serbia, there's quite a bit of problems with Chinese investments, which are actually coming from Serbia itself. We give free rein when it comes to workers' rights. We give the companies free rein when it comes to pollution and whatnot. And these problems actually reflect the Serbian problems of the Serbian state to a quite large extent. And regarding the organization against basically, maybe you can actually rephrase or repeat the question if I may.
What is the solution? You talked about the problems you mean
Okay.
this one or about China?
No, the China just answered. So
Yeah.
I remembered. Well, basically, that's a very standard sort of criticism that quite a lot of us get. So if you're not for the green transition, if you're not for the mine, so what the hell are you for? And so, if you ask me, I'm not against the green transition as such. I'm actually for a full green transition, which for me would require economic planning, and if you recalculate the amount of lithium we need, if we would have invested it into public infrastructure rather than private profits, private corporations, you would realize that we need far less lithium to start with, which then translates to we need less mines. We don't need to open up new mines. And especially if you look at the world globally, we actually have double capacities. We do have enough lithium globally. It's just that it's unevenly distributed. China, Australia, and basically the lithium triangle and the in Latin America, they do produce quite sufficient amount of lithium that on the one hand is actually uh, going into private infrastructure like electric vehicles, which are competing against each other. So you have double capacities. You have, Elon Musk on the one hand, you have Chinese producers on the other hand, European ones on the third hand, and basically, at the same time, this gives off the impression that there's not enough lithium about, that we need to mine more, and as a consequence of the fact that this is going into private pockets, public infrastructure gets worse and worse, and we remedy the problem with even more lithium and even more cars. And we are basically in a loop, which does require that we rethink our strategy and that we do consider planned green transition, which would actually be, constructed so as to achieve the SDG goals, so as to cut CO2 emissions, because allegedly it was the whole aim of the green transition. So my problem is not that I or any of the Serbs are just like simply hating ecology or hating our own environments. It's the opposite, actually. In order to protect our own and others' environment, global environment, because the environment is not national, like our borders do exist, but globally we do live in one environment. In order to protect it, we do need to rethink our market strategies and open up ourselves into planning. And that's where I see like a global sort of scheme happening. These problems of ecological imperialism has been actually created because of the contradictions of capitalism globally, whereby it is constantly producing contradictions. You have private corporations, the environment globally being basically scapegoated by these corporations. And in order to solve these solutions, you need to delete private property of the citizens, to take away somebody's homes, to take away somebody's environment in order to save a global environment. But that's obviously not going to happen. And so for me, we are in a period in which you do have a contradiction between the means of production, the mines and whatnot, and the relations of production, private property. And it can go only in two directions. Either you can attack the citizens, and save the corporations, or you can actually attack the corporations and save the citizens, So it's literally for me an either or. And the way I would do it, when I say attack corporations, I mean disassemble the multinational corporation, re-regulate the mining industry, and go and solve the question by introducing economic planning. That's it.
Thank you, Alexander. Actually, thank you, Maurice. Thank you, Alexander and Krunoslav, who is not here, for this really fruitful discussion. I think we gained a lot of insights and food for thought. Also, thanks to all the participants who joined this discussion. If you want to join in solidarity, if you want to support actually Congolese struggle and voices, you can join in solidarity during the Congo Week, which is from 19th to 25th October. There is a link in the chat you can follow. Also, for the people who are in Vienna, please visit the exhibition that is also part of this project called Laboratory for Anti-Imperial Solidarity, and it will be on until 21st until the end of the week, through which we also tried to articulate those voices at the periphery of Europe who deals with extractivist and environmental issues. Thanks again, and yes, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you
so very much.